No one dared to enter that house after sunset, but tonight, one door opened on its own and never closed again. She thought it was just an empty room, until the eye blinked back.
Mr. Midnight.
The house on Willow Lane didn't look haunted. It stood quietly at the end of a narrow street, its white paint peeling gently like aging skin. A tired swing creaked in the backyard, even when there was no wind. And every night, at exactly 2:15 a.m., a faint tapping echoed through the house from behind the locked door in the upstairs hallway. When Sana Malik, a young journalist, moved into the house with her husband, Arman, she saw the door but didn't think much of it. It was an old Victorian house, built in 1924, and every old house had its quirks. The landlord had given her a ring of keys, but one key, a black iron one, came with a stern warning. Don't use this. That door stays locked, always. She laughed at the seriousness in his tone, thinking it was some dramatic superstition, but on their first night, when the clock struck 2:15 a.m., she heard it. A soft, rhythmic tap. 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 Like fingernails against wood. She froze in bed. Arman was asleep beside her, his breath slow and even. The sound came from the hallway, steady and patient, like someone waiting. The next morning, she mentioned it casually over breakfast. Arman shrugged. Old pipes. Houses make noises. You're overthinking. But Sana wasn't imagining it. Over the next week, the tapping grew louder. Sometimes it turned into scratching, like something was trying to claw its way out. Other times she thought she heard whispers, low and hurried, like a conversation behind a wall. No matter what time she went to bed, at 2:15 a.m., it started. Always behind the locked door.
She tried asking the neighbors. Most avoided the question, changing the subject. One old woman finally muttered, "Some doors should never be opened," and walked away, clutching her rosary. By the 10th night, curiosity had begun to outweigh fear. Sana found herself standing before the locked door at 2 a.m., flashlight in one hand, the black iron key in the other. The door itself was strange, heavier than the others, its surface cold like stone. The brass handle was tarnished, and the keyhole looked more like a tiny, unblinking eye. She slid the key in slowly. It fit too perfectly, but before she could turn it, something knocked back. 3 sharp knocks from the other side, hard enough to make the door tremble. Her breath caught. She stumbled backward, the flashlight flickering. Then a voice, soft and childlike, came through the wood. "Sana, let me out." She dropped the key and ran. For the rest of the night, she sat awake in the living room, every light on, trying to convince herself she'd imagined it. The next day, she questioned Arman. He admitted he'd heard the tapping too. "I didn't want to scare you, but last night I heard it say my name." They agreed to call the landlord, but when she dialed, the line was dead. She tried his cell, no answer. His office said he'd left the country 2 weeks ago, right after they moved in. That night, the tapping didn't come at 2:15. It came at 1:45, then 1:10. By midnight, the house felt different. The air grew thick and damp. The walls seemed to hum, and the light bulbs dimmed one by one. Sana and Arman sat in their room, clutching each other, listening as footsteps began to move behind the locked door, pacing slowly back and forth. At 12:43, the door handle turned, slowly, deliberately.
Arman grabbed a hammer. Sana held the flashlight. They stepped into the hallway. The door was still locked, but the handle was moving on its own, twisting left and right like a hand was desperately trying to open it from inside. Then came the whisper again. "Please, let me out. I'm cold." Sana screamed. Armin swung the hammer at the door, not to break in, but to stop whatever was trying to come out. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. And then, silence. For 2 nights after, there were no sounds. The door was still locked. Life almost returned to normal. Until Sana found the old newspaper tucked behind a loose floorboard. The headline read, "Family Found Dead, Behind Locked Door, 1979. The article told of a father, mother, and 2 children found in that very room. No signs of forced entry, no explanation for the symbols carved on the walls and the black wax candles melted into the floor. The coroner's notes mentioned something disturbing. Bodies appeared weeks old, but neighbors reported screams the night before. Sana's hands trembled as she turned the page. A photo of the room showed a single wooden chair, a rope, and faint, human-shaped scorch marks on the floorboards. That night, Sana dreamed of the door. In her dream, she turned the key. The door swung open, and a wave of cold, rotting air washed over her. Inside, 4 pale figures sat in the corners, heads slowly rising to look at her. Their mouths opened wide, wider than humanly possible, and from their throats came the sound. Tap, tap, tap. She woke up screaming, but the worst part wasn't the dream. It was the fact that when she woke, the black iron key was in her hand, though she left it in the drawer. She begged Armin to leave. "We can't stay here. Something wants out." He agreed. They started packing. But as they carried boxes down, the front door slammed shut, the locks turning on their own, windows sealed tight. And upstairs, the locked door opened with a long, slow creak. Sana turned just in time to see it. The door stood open, darkness spilling out like smoke, and from inside stepped a little girl, barefoot, in a torn nightgown. Her head hung low, her hair covering her face. She whispered, "Thank you for letting us out." The lights went out. Screams filled the house. The neighbors reported hearing the couple shouting, doors slamming, glass breaking. But when police arrived the next morning, the house was silent. The furniture was untouched. The front door stood open, but the locked door was sealed again, as if it had never moved. Armin and Armin were gone. No trace. Except for a black iron key lying on the hallway floor, wet as if pulled from deep water. The house on Willow Lane still stands. Tenants come and go, but at 2:15 a.m. the tapping always starts, and every so often the door opens.